In a world totally screwed with chaos and corruption, a mysterious badass named Hwaipiang, the Invincible Man, shows up as the ultimate hope. With martial arts skills that are off the charts and a spirit that just won't quit, Hwaipiang smashes powerful enemies and ruthless tyrants. His past is a total enigma, but he's all about justice, protecting the innocent and obliterating the wicked. As he throws down with tough as nails foes and unearths dark secrets, Hwaipiang's true strength isn't just in his fists, but in his relentless drive to bring peace to this hit-up world. A young man wakes up full of sweat. He appears to have woken up from a dream and has been having this dream for quite some time now. He wonders why he has been having the same dream as if he has gone through it before. Moreover, there seems to be a woman constantly appearing in his dreams, and the man is wondering who she is. The scene then transitions to a man beating some guys while wishing that someone would be there to tell him why he is doing things that he never did in his life before. But most importantly, he wishes that it would have been nice to know who his parents are. It is October 1974. The same young man is sitting at the bar counter at Washington Club in Busan. A cleaner approaches the young man and Hwaipiang and tells him that he is done with the cleaning. Hwaipiang turns around and appreciates his work. Moreover, Hwaipiang is reading a book that he finds quite confusing. Shortly after, a man in a well-dressed suit arrives, asking Hwaipiang if he is studying. The man turns out to be the manager of the Washington Club, Lee Jungwon. Hwaipiang sees that Jungwon has bought a new suit and comments that it looks dashing and expensive. Jungwon explains that the suit makes him look legit and asks Hwaipiang to get one for himself as well. However, Hwaipiang refuses the offer, stating that his attire is decent. He further explains that he does not want to splurge around as it might cause him to not have any money to buy a house before marriage. However, Jungwon reminds Hwaipiang that he is just 20 years of age and that he is still far off from marriage. But Hwaipiang's primary goal is to build a family as he is an orphan. Thereupon, Jungwon begins explaining how a family can be tormenting and loving at the same time. They can torment one to earn more money, and they can love when one gets sick. Jungwon then promises Hwaipiang that he is going to buy him the best suit when he gets married. Their conversation then shifts to the instance where Hwaipiang beats some of Jungwon's subordinates. Hwaipiang immediately begins to trash talk about the guys he beat up, leading Jungwon to question the reason for Hwaipiang to beat them up. He explains that they always get on his nerves whenever he walks past them, and finally, Hwaipiang gets fed up, so he picks a fight with them. However, Jungwon believes that it was not a fight since Hwaipiang did not even give them a chance to even touch him, let alone touch him. As soon as their conversation progresses, Hwaipiang refers to the guys he beat up as cowards. Meanwhile, Jungwon finds it very amusing to see Hwaipiang. He recalls the time when he fought the Janabi gang. Jungwon was beaten up and lying injured by a wall. Meanwhile, Hwaipiang was taking care of the man responsible for causing injuries to Jungwon. Hwaipiang was doing it so efficiently that he overcame the gang members with little to no effort at all. After Hwaipiang is done with them, he walks over to Jungwon, asking him if he's okay. At that point, Jungwon developed an impression of Hwaipiang, and since then, it hasn't changed. Jungwon contemplates how when a human is fighting, they might be scared, swinging their weapons violently. However, this was not the case with Hwaipiang, as he stayed calm during the entire period of his fight. In the present, Jungwon proposes that Hwaipiang join him in his work, but he refuses the offer, mentioning that his pastor will be angry. Jungwon understands Hwaipiang's situation, so he stops insisting anymore. He then asks Hwaipiang if George stopped by recently and mentions that he hasn't heard from him lately. Hwaipiang asks Jungwon if he wants George to come visit him. Shortly after, a man named Changil walks into the club with a girl restrained in handcuffs. Changil explains that he has brought a woman instead of the debt money. He adds and explains that the woman has been attending Sangup High School, and when the boss heard it, she was asked to be sent here. Jungwon then asks Changil to take the woman to a room for her to have some rest, as she looks completely exhausted. Jungwon feels bad for the woman, as he is aware that being involved in debt is a one-way ticket to hell. Thereupon, Hwaipiang begins to panic and questions Jungwon about what he is going to do with the woman. Jungwon asks Hwaipiang if he knows the girl, leading Hwaipiang to reveal that he doesn't, but feels that his heart is ripped apart. Once again, Hwaipiang questions Jungwon about what is going to happen to that girl. Jungwon then begins to calm Hwaipiang down, as he is in a state of panic. Jungwon then explains that there are only two options for that girl. The first option for her is to become a barmaid and get sold off to American soldiers, and soon when he is about to mention that second option, Jungwon realizes something, asks Hwaipiang to wait right here, and proceeds to walk away. Soon, Hwaipiang recalls that it's the same girl from his dreams, Dong. Shortly after, Jungwon returns and reveals to Hwaipiang that the woman is single and lives with her mother. Moreover, she took a loan to pay for her brother's hospital bills, but her mother soon passed away, leaving all the debt on her. Jungwon then reveals that the woman owes a staggering 100,000 won. Just to take this into perspective, a normal low-income apartment is over 300,000 won. Thereupon, Hwapeong volunteers to pay off the girl's debt with his $500. Jungwon comments that they should be enough to pay off the girl's debt and begins to think how $500 roughly sums up to around 200,000 won. Jungwon then devises a plan and tells Hwapeong that he will have to tell the boss that the girl has known him since childhood and that he likes her very much. Jungwon assures Hwapeong that he is always there to help him out and asks Hwapeong to go and tell the woman about their plan. Shortly after, Hwapeong makes his way to her, where he asks the woman her name but receives no response in return. Hwapeong decides to break the silence and asks the woman if her name is Jungwon Dongdong but again receives no response from her. Hwapeong wonders if the girl doesn't remember anything and finds it possible since something similar happened in her past life. Hwapeong then hands over a drink to the woman and asks her to drink up and get a grip on herself. The woman then questions Hwapeong what he is going to do with her, and with that, Hwapeong certainly realizes that it's indeed Dongdong. He then begins to question his god why he reincarnated Dongdong in such a bad life once again. He wonders if she committed a lot of sins to end up like this. Hwapeong offers a glass of water to the woman and asks her to come back to her senses. He then asks her name, leading her to respond and mention that her name is Lee Jonghyun. Hwapeong then asks Jonghyun to listen to him carefully and warns her that if things go haywire, then none of them will be able to walk out of this alive. He then explains to her that they have known each other since childhood and that he likes her quite a lot. Further, Hwapeong advises Jonghyun not to be surprised by whatever he says. However, it is getting difficult for Jonghyun to keep herself calm as so much is going on with her, prompting her to question Jonghyun as to why he is helping her out. With a smirk on his face, Hwapeong grabs Jonghyun's hand, places it on his chest, asks her to feel the beating of his heart, and mentions that he feels like he's going crazy. Hwapeong believes that the two definitely know each other and has no doubt that they have met each other in their past lives. Hwapeong realizes that the reason why his heart is hammering so loudly and rapidly has to have a good enough reason for doing so. Moreover, he is aware that he looks like a wacko doing this, but he is already sold on the idea that it is destiny for Jonghyun to come into his life. However, Hwapeong soon realizes that he is being too over the top and begins to wonder what's going on with him. In the fit of the moment, Jonghyun begins to cry, asking Hwapeong what he is going to do with her. Thereupon, she sees a cross behind Hwapeong, who asks her to put all her trust in Hwapeong and follow him. When she comes back to her senses, she hears Hwapeong telling her that he is going to protect her no matter what the cost is. Moreover, Hwapeong asks Jonghyun to trust him and wait patiently for the events to unfold. Shortly after, the four, Jonghyun, Jungwon, Hwapeong, and the boss are engaged in a meeting regarding the concern of setting Jonghyun free. Jungwon begins to explain the many benefits that Hwapeong is bringing to the Washington Club and mentions the importance of having him around to act as a translator to the Yankees. Jungwon tells his boss that if he helps Hwapeong this time, he will end up being a great asset for him. Acting as Hwapeong's advocate, Jungwon explains that Hwapeong won't stay at a place where his lover will be sold off to the Yankees. Meanwhile, the boss is taken aback by Jonghyun's beauty. He realizes that she is looking quite pale as of now, but believes that with a little bit of makeup and after eating something, she will come out as someone gorgeous. The boss then recalls that Jonghyun used to go to school and thinks that it is a good idea for him to keep her as a secretary during the day and as a pillow at night. Immediately, Hwapeong falls to his knees, begging the boss that he will work hard and repay the favor for the rest of his life. Seeing this, the boss notices that the boy who saved Jungwon has all grown up now. However, he is not willing to let Hwapeong keep Jonghyun all for himself as he is admiring her glance, but he also realizes that if he rejects Hwapeong, it will mean that he will stay in a tough spot. He then asks Hwapeong to stand up, apologizes to him, and mentions that he cannot set Jonghyun free, but what he can do is that he will not sell her to the Yankees and won't send her to the red light district. The boss further reveals that Jonghyun will work as his secretary, where she will be fed well and live a fine life by his side. This sparks a reaction from Jungwon, who insists the boss on listening to their request, stating that he is indebted to Hwapeong for saving his life. However, the boss tells Jungwon that it is his job to repay Hwapeong and not his. Jungwon then explains to his boss that he is not asking for any favors from him, but merely pointing out and weighing the circumstances that he is putting him in. Meanwhile, the boss realizes that he has messed things up as he just yelled at Hwapeong. Simultaneously, Hwapeong begins to stare at the boss with fury, prompting the boss to question him if he is glaring at him. Hwapeong then changes his tone completely compared to a few minutes ago and asks the boss to shut his mouth. The boss is in complete and utter disbelief and asks Hwapeong to say one more time what he just said, rendering him to question the boss if his ear holes are closed and ask him if he cannot understand simple human language. Jungwon immediately tries to calm Hwaypyeong down, asking him to apologize to the boss, mentioning that he is making things worse. Hwaypyeong then tells Jungwon that he has chosen the wrong person to serve and reveals that he has been serving the boss for the last 8 years and is aware of what type of a person he is. Hwaypyeong then proceeds to hold Jungwon down by his shoulder and tells him that this is the only way to deal with this situation. He reminds Jungwon that he saved his life and asks him to not resent if he breaks one of his shoulders, but also assures him that he is going to disinfect it later using vodka. Hwaypyeong then proceeds to stick a nail on Jungwon's right shoulder, paralyzing him in the process, and mentions to him that he won't be able to stand up until he takes the nail out of his shoulder. Although Hwaypyeong can easily knock Jungwon unconscious if he wants to, he actually wants him to see the events unfold that are going to occur. Hwaypyeong then reveals to Jungwon that when the boss apologized for not wanting to fulfill their request, he had already decided to kill Hwaypyeong. Hwaypyeong continues by telling Jungwon that he has always watched afar, which is why he knows better than him. Hwaypyeong then questions the boss if he is right in his suspicions, and he confirms it by telling Hwaypyeong that he is pretty sharp. The boss then begins to remind Hwaypyeong that he is just a kid and that he hasn't seen the world like he has. The boss believes that Hwaypyeong still doesn't have much experience to be involved in such situations and asks him to think about who he really is. He tells Hwaypyeong that he doesn't even have an identity to begin with and just knows how to act cheeky. The boss also believes that Hwaypyeong has no clue how to survive and mentions that he just learned how to use his fists and start acting out of his line. The boss then proceeds to pull up a knife from his back and tells Hwaypyeong that he is nothing more than a brat. Meanwhile, Hwaypyeong tells the boss that he got worried for a bit after seeing that he was staying relaxed, making Hwaypyeong believe that he might have gotten his hands on a gun from the Yankees. But Hwaypyeong is now relieved that the boss does not have a lethal weapon. The boss grows agitated by Hwaypyeong's constant bad behavior. At the same time, Hwaypyeong continues to joke around, asking the boss how he has managed to sit with a knife under him for this long. This adds fuel to the already burning fire, and the boss begins to charge at Hwaypyeong, calling him a scoundrel. However, Hwaypyeong does not even give him time to react and attacks him with nails, in the process piercing through his ear. With blood on his hands, the boss finally realizes that Hwaypyeong is not someone ordinary, and that he surely packs something that is not outright visible. He realizes that he has walked himself into the lion's den, but it is already too late for him to back off now. Hwaypyeong then tells the boss that he shouldn't have rejected him in the first place, and asks him to think carefully next time given that he gets out of this alive. He then questions the boss as to how he wants to be taken care of, leading him to wonder what type of guy Hwaypyeong is, as he is so fearless in front of someone who is feared by many. Moreover, he begins to wonder the reason why Hwaypyeong is working as a waiter after having all that prowess. Hwaypyeong then walks past the boss, telling him that if they were 4 floors high, then he would have simply thrown him out of the window, making it look like a suicide. However, this comes off as unfortunate that they are only on the 2nd floor, and Hwaypyeong is afraid that it's not going to do the boss much damage. He then once again questions the boss about how he wants to die and proposes to strangle him with a belt or hang him from a doorknob. Hwaypyeong is sure that these reasons are enough to make it seem like a suicide. He then informs the boss that he is about to die, but he is being merciful enough to let him choose the way he dies. Witnessing all this, the boss becomes furious at constantly getting insulted, leading him to charge at Hwaypyeong with a knife pointing at him. However, this only backfires on the boss, as Hwaypyeong manages to hold a grasp of his hands, twists it brutally, and throws him on the ground. Hwaypyeong then proceeds to pull out another nail and stabs it on top of the boss's right hand, rendering him unable to move his hand anymore as the nail is stuck on the wooden table. The boss then realizes that he has messed things up and begins to mention that he is probably not in his right state of mind. He then begins to apologize to Hwaypyeong for his behavior and questions if he can find it suitable to forgive him. Hwaypyeong then turns to Jungwon and asks him if he gets the picture now, and explains that if he is to spare the boss as of this moment, then not only he will make Hwaypyeong's life a living hell, but also Jungwon's. The boss then sees the opportunity and makes another attempt to try and kill Hwaypyeong, but fails yet another time. But this time, Hwaypyeong brutally dislocates his shoulders with a knee attack, leaving him severely injured. Hwaypyeong then picks up an object and shoves it inside the boss's mouth, asking him to shut up and not make a sound. Hwaypyeong then explains to the boss that the reason why he is putting up so much with him is because if he is to leave, then he is sure that the boss will send his incompetent behind him to deal with Hwaypyeong, and this will only take Hwaypyeong's precious time, which he can easily spend in some other important things. He then asks the boss to give him some ideas regarding what he should do next, and tells him that he is utterly done for. Moreover, Hwaypyeong has made sure that the boss's shoulder will never heal no matter how many treatments he gets. Huipium also reminds the boss that the people from the Janabi gang and Hollywood gang will be on their way and asks him if he thinks he can stay alive if Huipium is to spare his life at this moment. The boss then thinks about how he will be eaten raw by the gangs that might be on their way already. He also recalls that dealing with these gangs is the reason why he kept Jungwon with him all this time. Huipium then pulls out the object from the boss's mouth, leading him to question Huipium as to what he can do to earn his forgiveness. Huipium tells the boss that if he wants to live the rest of his life in peace, then he should hand over his gang to the bachelor manager, Jungwon. Huipium is aware that the boss is aware that the only loyal person he has in his gang is Jungwon, and if he is to hand over the leadership to someone else, then a huge conflict will take place within the gang. Huipium then reminds the boss that it was over for him from the moment he rejected the offer of a man who would have stayed with him until the end. But this time, the boss seems to have learned his lesson, or more so, he has learned that he is powerless in this situation, which is why he is willing to do anything for his peaceful life. Huipium then repeats his terms and tells the boss to make sure to complete them, and also asks him to not make this any harder than this. Huipium then approaches Jungwon, takes out the nail from his right shoulder, mentions that the wound isn't very deep, and asks Jungwon to keep pressing on the wound. Huipium advises Jungwon to call the guys when he leaves to take over the boss's gang, as this is something that should not be delayed, which might result in someone else getting their hands on it. Jungwon seems to be pretty furious with how Huipium handles this situation, and he asks him to get out of his sight and not show up ever again. With that being said, Huipium wishes Jungwon to live a good life and states that he will be leaving. Huipium then makes his way to Jonghyun and reaches out his hands to her. After a few seconds of contemplation, Jonghyun takes Huipium's hand without any hesitation. That's where Huipium tells Jonghyun that he is too broke for them both to manage their lives, so he mentions that they will both have to work quite hard. Huipium then once again makes his way to the boss, grabs his wallet, and mentions that he deserves this much after working for a few years for him now. The story then shifts to a few months later, where Huipium introduces Jonghyun to his dead mother-in-law. He mentions that he is incompetent and afraid that Jonghyun will have to go through some very difficult days in her life, but he promises one thing to his mother-in-law. Huipium states that he will cherish and protect Jonghyun for the rest of his life and never grow tired of her. Huipium is working at a local restaurant where the specialty happens to be Chinese cuisine, but he's finding it to be quite difficult. While his eyes are stinging, Huipium looks over at his head chef and sees that he is working with so much ease. The head chef then advises Huipium that cooking is all about timing. Later that night, a pregnant Jonghyun arrives at the same restaurant Huipium works at, telling him that she is hungry, hence the reason for her arrival. However, Huipium reminds her that he is still not the head chef of that restaurant. In response, Jonghyun tells him that she will eat anything that's made by him as well as their kid. Shortly after, Huipium brings her the food, and upon her taking the first bite, he questions how the food is, leading Jonghyun to tell him that he can become head chef in no time. Lost in the moment, Huipium tells himself that he is going to feed Jonghyun for the rest of her life. The scene then transitions to 26 years later, where Huipium's daughter, Choyeon, appears to be eating in the same place where Jonghyun was once sitting. Moreover, the restaurant has changed quite a lot, and Huipium has grown older now. Choyeon appears to be enjoying the food a lot, but gets asked by Huipium to eat slowly. Huipium comments on Choyeon how she is all grown up but is still very clumsy. He then leaves to bring sweet and sour pork for his daughter. It is October 22nd of the year 2000, Sang-Ayan. Choyeon Eri's floor manager is taking an order from a customer. Huipium looks over at Ayan and sees that she is doing pretty well, as it turns out that he had to make a part-time position for her. Moreover, he looks over at Oh Hyunmin, Choyeon Eri's kitchen assistant, who is a very shy guy, and he appears to be gazing over at Ayan. It is believed that he takes a liking to her, but he is too scared to confess it. Huipium finds this behavior to be foolish and believes that there is no way Ayan would know that he likes her if he does not decide to approach her in the first place. But he decides to let it be, thinking that they will be together if they are meant to be. Looking at these kids, Huipium cannot help but think of Jonghyun. He then asks Ayan to play some music and begins to prepare some food while thinking of Jonghyun. Hearing the lyrics of the song adds to the moment, and Huipium grows emotional. After finishing the dish, he walks outside the restaurant to get some fresh air. Thereupon, Huipium begins to wonder that the world is changing quite fast and ponders if it is time for him to retire, but rebukes this thought after realizing that he is still at the age of working. A man who appears to be familiar with Huipium walks there, calling him Mr. Warabashi. To explain better, Warabashi means disposable wooden chopsticks in Japanese. The man asks Huipium what he is doing there, leading Huipium to question him about when he is going to start dressing as per his age. However, the man believes there is nothing wrong with his outfit and explains that he is doing it to look young to get married. Pyong spreads water all over his dreams, telling him that all the girls will run away after seeing him in that outfit, and reminds him that warabashi in Japanese means chopsticks. As it turns out, the man had been using this word since his childhood and had no idea what he meant. This leads Pyong to teach him even further, mentioning that all the words ending with she are mostly Japanese. In response, the man tells Pyong that he is so smart in a joking way and begins to make fun of his linguistic ability and even reminds him that he is a Chinese expert. Pyong accepts the compliment but advises him once again not to call them warabashi. Moreover, he tells the man that he could have just called him chef as it sounds cooler, but the man reminds Pyong why he actually calls him warabashi. This sparks a reaction from Pyong as he begins to walk back inside the restaurant, asking him to stop spouting nonsense and telling him to get inside if he is there for a meal. Ayam receives the man a chusi. However, he asks her to stop calling him that and tells her that he will start calling her ugly if she keeps calling him a chessie. He then asks to be served fried rice, black bean sauce for service, and spicy seafood soup with lots of meat. The man wonders why he keeps coming here for the food, but realizes that the food here is so delicious that it always somehow makes him come to this restaurant. Moreover, the rice has already begun to storm up a flavor in his mouth, and he is aware of the fact that greasy rice is not beneficial for his health, but somehow he cannot keep his hands away from eating them. Thereupon, Jesse hears Ayan dealing with a couple of problematic guys. One of the guys tells her that if she keeps up her act, then their appa is going to get mad. He further asks Ayan to come play with them and assures them that it will be fun. The other guy tells Ayan that he will take her to a good place that night. The second guy continues by telling Ayan to come with them that night and develop closeness with the waiters as it would make her look good in front of her friends. Moreover, they are even advising her to stop working at this restaurant and join them in their line of work to make good money. However, Ayan tells them that she is not interested in their offer. However, the insisting behavior of the two continues as they tell Ayan that she has a nice face and that it will make her at least 100 times more than she is making as of now. They begin to show her the bigger picture, explaining that she can even have a chance at becoming a celebrity. Meanwhile, Adresi realizes that these two guys are the room salon touts. Simultaneously, one of the guys begins to act more approaching and tells Ayan that she can go to the nightclub every other day if they come to work for her. He then begins to grab Ayan's hand to check her palm if she is fated for having a lot of money, but Ayan can be seen resisting as he is about to touch her. Seeing things getting out of hand, Adresi decides to act and gets up to deal with the guys. However, when a sudden realization hits, he sits back down, realizing that he worries for nothing as this restaurant is run by Pyong. Thereupon, two chopsticks come flying toward one of the guys, missing him by an inch. This scene gives us a pretty good explanation of why Adresi calls Pyong Mr. Warabashi. Pyong gazes over the other guy and throws a couple of chopsticks toward them. Meanwhile, the entire store is terrified of the fearsome behavior of Pyong. As he slowly begins to walk up to them, an aura can be felt all across the store. He then soon tells the two that it is enough. After approaching the two, Pyong asks them if the food is not to their liking, but he receives no response as the two keep standing there, scared for their lives. Pyong then tells the two that they must give him an answer if they want their fingers to stay intact and warns them that the chopsticks might hit somewhere else as well and has no guarantee that they will miss them every time. This much terror was enough for the two to begin speaking as the two mentioned that there was no problem with the food and that the food was very delicious. Pyong confirms if they mean what they are saying and receives a positive response. He then continued by asking them to pay for the meal since they liked it very much. One of the guys then proceeds to take money out from his coat, but in the process ends up throwing his card out of his pocket. Pyong quickly picks up the card and sees that it belongs to Umma, an organization owned by none other than Lee Jungwon. Pyong then asks Ayan if she can help him find a similar name card from his name card holder and tells her that it is in the back. Without wasting any time, Ayan quickly gets to the job. Meanwhile, Pyong thinks that he needs to get rid of these two eyesores. He is aware that he might succeed in sending them off for that day, but he is sure that they will be disturbing him some other day, so Pyong wants to put an end to this situation for good. Pyong believes that if he doesn't take care of this situation as soon as possible, it will probably lead him to beat the heck out of the two eyesores, and in the process, the store will sustain damage, something that Pyong does not want to happen. Shortly after, Ayan arrives with a name card that Pyong asked for, and he sees that he is right, and it is the same Jungwon that he knows. Pyong then begins to dial a number on the telephone while the two guys tell him that they will be taking their leaves since their work there is done. However, Pyong asks them to wait and tells them that it will only take a moment. After some time, Jungwon finally picks up the phone, which is then followed by Pyong introducing himself to Jungwon. Pyong then asks the two guys for their names, but they decide to stay quiet as they are not sure what is going to happen with them. Pyong then informs Jungwon that these guys won't say their names, but reveals that one of the guys is named Jong Moonsu. He then questions Jung-won if the two guys are his employees and informs him that the two in question took a liking to his second daughter. This type of behavior cannot be excused by Hwapyeong, and he wants this situation to come to a conclusion where he will not have to break the bones of the two. Hwapyeong then expresses his disappointment in Jung-won as he is now sure that he is still handling the side of business where beautiful women work to pay their bills and rent by selling their bodies. However, Jung-won denies that he is working in that department, leading Hwapyeong to switch back the conversation to the two guys and telling Jung-won that he does not want to see them near his store ever again. He continues by warning that he will get mad if such a thing is to happen again. He follows this up by asking Jung-won if he is aware of what happens when he gets mad, and it appears that Jung-won seems to have a pretty good idea. Their conversation comes to an end when Hwapyeong asks Jung-won to stop by his store someday, as it has been so long since the two talked with each other. Jung-won then asks Hwapyeong to tell something to his guys, and with that, the conversation concludes. Hwapyeong then conveys Jung-won's message to the two guys, asking them to head back to him immediately. The two then leave the place as if there is no tomorrow, but that might be because the two were worried for their lives. After their departure, Hwapyeong notes that the customers are terrified of what they have witnessed, as it seems unbelievable for a guy to make holes in the wall just by throwing chopsticks. To make their suspicion go away, Hwapyeong tells the customers that the wall is made from clay, which is anything that's thrown there gets stuck. We then get a backstory about the past years spent by Hwapyeong. Back when he lived in Kangho in the Shaolin Temple in faraway China, he was asked to put boots on the ground and sports shoes on a lean field. People kept coming and going there, but it was getting for Hwapyeong to find someone from whom he could learn. He then ended up locking himself in the kitchen and drenched the chopstick with his tears. Hwapyeong had spent 30 years in the Shaolin Temple, 30 years in the Biomyosa Temple, and devoted himself to cooking for another 40 years in Gyeongsang Mountain. This sky-high dedication and the constant struggle with years of hard work have awakened the meaning of martial arts for Hwapyeong, and thus he regained his youth. After some time, Kangho disappeared and the world moved to using guns and cannons. This led Hwapyeong to fall into dejection, and as a result, he secluded himself from the world. It is quite difficult to tell that a person of such great strength and the world's strongest man is working in a kitchen. Hwapyeong wonders if this is convincing enough. He then decides to continue working for that day and tells Hyungmin that they are going to serve some dish that will be on the house. Moreover, he asks Hyungmin to fire up the stove. The following day, Hwapyeong wakes up from a deep sleep. He looks over at Choyoung's picture that he has in a frame, asking about the funny thing that is making her smile like this. Hwapyeong then tells himself that smiling is still better. He then assures that he is doing fine. Moreover, he asks her to not worry about them. Their bond seems to be quite strong, and from what it may seem, Choyoung appears to have left this world while making a place in Hwapyeong's heart for the rest of his life. As the broad daylight shines up on Hwapyeong, he begins to do his routine exercise, performing yoga and meditating with a perfect posture. As the routine progresses, Hwapyeong slowly begins to get occupied by a brightly glowing aura all over him. With the aura exerting out from Hwapyeong like crazy, he tries to accomplish something but fails to do so. After some time, he finally gives up, realizing that it doesn't work just as he suspected. However, this leads him to contemplate whether he should be regretful that there are things that he still cannot accomplish even at this age, or if he should be grateful that there are still things that he can accomplish in his life. Hwapyeong then recalls that there is no rush, as he cannot put his techniques to use anywhere else. As he is contemplating all this, Hwapyeong suddenly looks over at the wall clock and gets worried after seeing that he is already too late. Hwapyeong seems to be angry at the clock for not mentioning the time so he can prepare accordingly. He then immediately runs to prepare himself to run to his store. Later, he is seen preparing something, telling his wife that Choyoung called and informed her that she is missing her father's kimbap since he is a Chinese cuisine chef. Later, at the store, Choyoung arrives and begins munching kimbap as if she hasn't eaten for ages. Meanwhile, Hwapyeong finds it relaxing to look at her eating and believes that Choyoung's eating habits are just like her mom's. Hwapyeong then asks her to slow down and if she wants a glass of water. He even mentions to her that she sure is eating well these days, which sparks a smiling expression from Choyoung. Hwapyeong then questions Choyoung if Seokwon, her boyfriend, has been busy as of late. Choyoung confirms and adds that Seokwon has to take over the reins and study Mandarin at the same time. As it turns out, his schedule is quite hectic, which is why the two are not together yet. However, Hwapyeong believes that Seokwon is going to end up getting knocked over. He believes in his abilities and is sure that he is good, but Hwapyeong also believes that Seokwon lacks stamina. With a wink, Choyoung explains that this is why she decided to marry Seokwon, because of his personality, so she can order him around. This leads Hwapyeong to question Choyoung that is how she views her husband, but Choyoung knows the perfect answer and asks his father to stop pretending that he doesn't like that feature in Seokwon. Hwapyeong then sees that Choyoung is chalking up a big appetite and asks her if she has any news. Chodown understands the assignment and confirms from Huepium he means to ask whether she is pregnant or not, and she appears to have hit the nail right on its head, as that's exactly what Huepium wants to ask. Before answering, Chodown questions her father if he is eager to become an old grandpa, but mentions that with his looks and age, the title of a grandpa wouldn't suit him. Chodown then reveals that she got super hungry while rushing yesterday for work and skipped dinner in the process, leading Huepium to question if she is sure and mentioning that maybe it happened without her knowledge. In response, Chodown asks Huepium to wait till the next year and reveals that that is when they have decided to have a baby. As this conversation comes up, Huepium suddenly remembers that Chodown had a health checkup and that he had forgotten to ask her how it went. So he proceeds to inquire Chodown how it went and about how the report came out. Chodown then begins to explain that she had her checkup 2 days ago, but comments that those guys are insane. Unknowingly, they extracted plenty of Chodown's blood and said that it was an error. When Chodown asked for further details, she was told that they accidentally swapped her data with someone else or something like that, but she assured her father that there were no screw-ups or anything. Chodown tries to express how anxious she was when it happened. She continues by telling Huepium how they apologize after having a guilty conscience, and not only that, but they even compensated Chodown and Sukwon with a 5-star hotel voucher. Huepium asked if Sukwon was okay with all this, leading Chodown to reveal that the hotel has many branches in China, so she went ahead and booked the time and deposit, and thus everything worked out as planned. As for Sukwon, Chodown reveals that he gave her the green light to go along with this plan. Huepium then tells Chodown that Sukwon might look weak from the outside, but he is actually very strong-willed. However, he has to be dispatched overseas now in a very short amount of time. But Chodown assures Huepium that Sukwon will get his promotion and return after 2 years. She then continues the conversation by asking her father as to when he is coming to China and tells him that he needs to hurry. It appears that she is migrating there just for the sake of her father. Startled by her sudden mood change, Huepium tells Chodown that he cannot just leave for a different country without having a proper plan, and adds that he is trying to make things work at the store. For that, Huepium needs to train Hyunmin a bit more, so much so that he will be able to become a qualified head chef. It is then we discover that Hyunmin's food actually tastes better than Huepium's. However, the problem lies with others who will be fine once they accumulate another year of experience at least, and not anytime soon. Chodown realizes that a year is too long of a time, prompting her to question her father if he wants her to make their lives a living hell by giving them the hardest training and making them learn in no more than 6 months. The father-daughter duo decides to go along with this plan. As she is about to leave, Chodown provides a few albums to Huepium that she has brought along with her, and tells him that there are also romantic songs in this album along with the songs sung by his favorite singer, Teresa Tang. Huepium realizes that Chodown must be worried that her father is lonely, which is why she is doing such admirable things for him. Thereupon, Huepium advises Chodown to brush up on her Mandarin, since she will move to China. However, Chodown is not sure that she has a knack for learning languages like her father, as he is a native, whereas Chodown spent only 2 years studying Mandarin. However, Huepium reminds her that learning a language is all about the guts and facing them head-on. He then reminds her that she will go to China to buy things, and if she has no idea how to communicate with the sellers there, she will be eaten alive by them and will read her like a book. He then asks her to face her mistakes head-on, which is a perfect way of accomplishing anything. Chodown then proceeds to get inside a taxi and is seen off by her father. Shortly after she leaves. In the taxi, Chodown realizes that it's time for Huepium to find a company and is sure that her mother will agree as well. We then jump into a flashback scene where her mom is on her deathbed, asking for her ashes to be spread along the coast of Taean County. She believes that in this way she can travel all over the world, but in reality she just wants Huepium to not hold back and live his life freely. One day, Huepium was standing by the edge of a cliff along the coastline, asking his god why he let this happen. With a broken voice, Huepium tells his god that he lived an upright life this time and asks if that's not what he wanted. Chodown then stops her father and consoles him for the loss of his wife, but he decides to remain strong. In the present, Chodown realizes that in that moment she was not helping her father with anything, but rather holding him back from grieving for his loss. Moreover, Chodown blames herself for how her father turned out to be and believes that she is a failed daughter. Hyunmin and Co. have arrived at the Hope Orphanage. Huepium considers it to be his treasure, and they seem to have brought a lot of food for the orphans that are living there. Later, in the kitchen, Hyunmin begins to knead the dough while the kids gather around and look at his mastery. Seeing Hyunmin being so skillful, one of the kids mentions how he wants to become a chef like Hyunmin. However, Hyunmin reveals to him that it is not so easy to become a chef and explains that they will have to chop ingredients for a few years like Dongsu, an apprentice of Hyunmin. Meanwhile, Huepium sees this and thinks about how he wants the orphans to choose a different profession, but he is also aware that they will have to start earning pennies when they become adults, and if Choyang Eatery can become their source of income, then Hwapyeong has no problems with it, as he is willing to help the orphans out whenever he can get a chance. After a while, I.M. begins serving food to the orphan kids and asks them to eat the veggies as well. With a happy and satisfied look on his face, Hwapyeong sees the young orphans being so excited while having their meals. Shortly after, Han Yong-woo, the president of the Hope Orphanage, arrives and tells Hwapyeong that it is nice for him to see him around. Hwapyeong tells Yong-woo that he is being too courteous and reveals that by next month it will have accumulated enough funds for them to build a bathhouse, and proposes that they build it to knee length so that the kids will be able to wash themselves comfortably. Yong-woo realizes that Hwapyeong is determined to construct the bathhouse because of Soeun. However, Hwapyeong has no idea why Soeun specifically caught his attention. Seeing her background, it can be easily said that every orphan has a very painful upbringing. Among these orphans, many kids were abused, but they seem to be doing well now, thanks to the courtesy of Hwapyeong and his store along with Yong-woo and the Hope Orphanage. He assures Hwapyeong that Soeun will soon begin to speak again properly and will also mingle and play with others, and asks Hwapyeong to stop being worried about her. Furthermore, he advises him to raise Soeun on his own if it bothers him this much, but Hwapyeong refuses, stating that he is not confident in raising someone without the support of his wife. He sees that Kyungmin can hold things pretty well now and believes that if Dongsu can follow in his footsteps, then he can calmly retire and deal with such things. Yong-woo hopes that things work out accordingly because many people are eyeing this piece of land along with many children who are willing to drop out. So Yong-woo has decided to move to a rural village. Hwapyeong comments that they must hurry if that is the case, as a powerless man with treasure can be poisoned and the kids will be infected once the flies start investing. Yong-woo then reveals that he has already started looking for a decent buyer and that he will begin to negotiate for them to stay there until they can find a good place for themselves. Hwapyeong believes that this is good thinking and asks him to contact him immediately if there are any instances of flies lingering around. Yong-woo is aware that Hwapyeong is not one to bluff and assures him that he will inform him whenever danger lingers, but also mentions that it is highly unlikely that something like that would happen. Hwapyeong then asks Yong-woo if there are kids who want to drop out of school and reminds him that living in an orphanage is reason enough for them to get bullied. But it is not their fault, as the elders are the ones who treat them differently and bully little kids just because they are powerless. Hwapyeong then asks Yong-woo to keep an eye on the kids and asks him to send those kids to him who wish to join his line of work. Yong-woo takes this as good news, as he can be less worried about the kids now. Meanwhile, Hwapyeong thinks about how he has to prepare Kyungmin as soon as possible, while keeping Hope Orphanage as the first and foremost priority. It is October 30th, 2000. A man in a black suit is standing by the window with a letter in his hands. The letter is an invitation from Gwaimok for the man to visit his new land. However, he proceeds to burn the letter after lighting it in flames. The scene then shifts to August 11th, 2000. Like always, Hwapyeong is working diligently at his store. He then receives a phone call from his daughter, Choyang. Hwapyeong asks her about the progress of her preparation and discovers that she will be leaving for China the next day. Hwapyeong suggests that they talk the next time that they meet before her departure, but finds out that Choyang is already coming to his store to meet with him. It is November 9th now, and Hwapyeong is watching Choyang devouring the black bean noodles that he made for her after such a long time. Hwapyeong tells her that he will come to China to make these noodles for her, seeing that she likes them very much. He then begins thinking about how this is the first time he is sending Choyang off far away, but is aware of the fact that she didn't study abroad because of him. Later, in the afternoon, the three, Hwapyeong, Choyang, and Seokwon, arrive at the airport. Choyang and Seokwon then begin to leave as their plane is about to depart. Choyang bids her father farewell while he asks her to watch out for the food that she eats and asks her to always be careful. Choyang then asks her father to join them if he is so worried about her, leading him to explain that she will come there very soon. Hwapyeong then once again thinks about how he had to prepare Hyungmin to take over the shop and realizes that he will have to do it one way or the other. Moreover, he realizes that he is not sending Choyang off to a war or something, but is constantly having an unsettling feeling where he cannot keep himself away from worrying about her. On the same day, Choyang and Seokwon arrive at their hotel and check in. They then make their way to their room where Choyang begins to speak Chinese, leading Seokwon to suggest that they practice something else. Choyang questions him what he is trying to imply that they should be doing, and the atmosphere gets intimate in no time. The two then exchange "I love you" and begin to lean for a kiss when suddenly the lights flicker, causing them to be distracted. Seokwon comments that they will raise the issue to the reception the very next day. They then once again go back to being intimate when suddenly their luggage drops. Choyang wonders if they left the window open, but realizes that even if they did, the luggage shouldn't have dropped like it has. It is November 10th, 2000. Seokwon questions Choyang where they should visit first since they are in Beijing. He then suggests that they should at least go see the Forbidden City and the Great Wall of China, and asks her which one she prefers. Thereupon, Choyang comments how the Forbidden City has a lot of nearby attractions and thinks that one day won't be enough for them to walk around the entire area. Seokwon then understands that Choyang wants to visit the Great Wall of China first and reveals to her that the taxi rental is about 400 yuan. Seokwon suggests that he ask the front desk to call a taxi for them, as that would be much more convenient. But Choyang comments that it will be expensive as the distance is about 60 kilometers from their hotel, but Seokwon believes that the rental is not that expensive given that it's for a round trip. Choyang then agrees with Seokwon, realizing that they have one of the biggest world mysteries in front of them and it would be a shame for them to not visit the place. The Great Wall of China consists of great history, and Emperor Qin appears to have built a masterpiece that would be remembered for ages. Without wasting any more of their time, the two get up to prepare to depart for their hike. Immediately when Choyang gets up, she feels a sudden disturbance in her stomach, making her regret that she didn't visit the hospital before coming to China. Moreover, it is a tad bit uncomfortable for her to go visit a hospital in another country. Meanwhile, Seokwon appears to be in conversation with the front office of the hotel. After ending the call, he tells Choyang that they are in luck that day and reveals that the reception got them a tour guide which would be much more helpful than getting a taxi. Seokwon adds and mentions that their tour guide also drives a Mercedes-Benz, leading Choyang to question if it won't be pricey. However, Seokwon reveals that they will just have to pay 100 more yuan compared to the original rental price for the taxi. Since it is not overkill, Choyang and Seokwon decide to go with the option of having a tour guide. Shortly after, the chauffeur arrives and the two are escorted outside of the hotel to the car. The chauffeur introduces himself as Jo Gukbang and mentions that he is going to be their tour guide for the day. Choyang notices that Gukbang is quite fluent in Korean, leading him to reveal that his hometown is Hailongjiang, a place where many ethnic Koreans live. Choyang tells the tour guide that they will be in his care, and Gukbang goes on to direct them inside his car. Seokwon then turns around and pays the helper for his hard work, for which he shows his gratitude. Immediately after taking a seat inside the car, Seokwon finds the Mercedes-Benz to be quite comfortable. In response, Choyang reminds Seokwon that the car hasn't even moved yet. Her behavior then quickly changes after she notices that the interior of the car is a little off, judging by the fact that this should be a touring car. Gukbang then mentions that they will be leaving now and ignites the car. The car soon leaves while the helper stands there with a strange expression on his face. While on the road, Seokwon notices that the area they are going through is completely vacant, prompting her to question if buildings are going to be filled in this area in no time. Choyang confirms this by explaining that due to the Olympics, they will be building many buildings in this area. All of a sudden, Gukbang comes to a halt, apologizes to the two, and tells them that you will have to go and check the car. Seokwon inquires if there is something wrong, leading Gukbang to politely ask them to wait for a moment and mention that he will go and have a look. Thereupon, Seokwon also starts getting suspicious whether this car is even a Benz, whereas Choyang is more worried about the fact that they will have to change their plans for the day. Soon Seokwon notices that Gukbang is having trouble finding the issue with the car and decides to give him a hand. He then tells Choyang that he will go and take a look. Meanwhile, Choyang is completely disappointed after getting into such trouble at this point when they are enjoying the tour. At the same time, it appears that Gukbang has asked Seokwon to take a look in the trunk to find something, and he proceeds to go back to the driver's seat. Choyang then turns around to see what Seokwon is doing, who then smiles at her, thinking that it is time for him to flex his muscles. Choyang sees Seokwon acting so cool and finds it impressive, but little does she know that an unfortunate event is about to take place. As soon as Choyang looks back at Gukbang, he speeds up the car immediately, leaving Seokwon behind and making him fall to the ground as he was leaned by the car trunk. Choyang then begins to scream, asking Gukbang what he is doing, but Gukbang appears to have turned a deaf ear to her and is ignoring her as everything is going according to the plan for him. Choyang continuously asks Gukbang to stop the car, but he once again continues to ignore her. Meanwhile, Seokwon is screaming out for Choyang as the two are setting apart when suddenly a huge truck begins coming Seokwon's way. The moment of horror flashes before Choyang's eyes as she sees Seokwon getting rammed by the huge truck, sending him flying far away, considerably causing his death. Choyang grows mad as she suffers a huge loss, turns around, and in a daunting tone asks Gukbang to stop the car. He still doesn't listen, prompting Choyang to scream her lungs out, asking him to stop the car. She then tries to use physical force to make Gukbang stop the car, but to no avail. Choyang believes that Seokwon must be alive, and she realizes that she needs to stay calm in this situation and handle things accordingly with a sound mind. She needs to go back to Sikwon and aim for her chance in getting out of the car alive, but she is scared nonetheless and murmurs to her father, asking what she should do in this dire situation. She then recalls Huipyeong suggesting to her that even if she is cornered by a tiger, make sure to stay focused and alert. Choyang then decides to stay calm and thinks about why she is getting kidnapped and wonders if it is for human trafficking or ransom. She then decides that she will kill Gupbang for sure for landing hell upon them. Choyang then begins to make her way into the purse, takes out her keys, and decides to use them to get out of this situation. Choyang then begins to devise a plan in her mind and thinks that she needs to be at a closer distance with Gupbang for her to aim at the correct angle, and realizes that her force will be better with the weight that she possesses. Choyang tries to calm herself down and asks herself to not be scared and is determined to heed her father's advice to get to safety. On the same day in Seoul, Huipyeong tells another worker that he will go and get some fresh air, and the worker mentions that he will clean the things. Huipyeong then makes his way out of the store while stretching himself. Outside, he sees a Christian preacher asking people to turn to Jesus or burn in hell, and asking them to trust their father for their houses to receive salvation. The notion of turning to Jesus or getting burned in hell is found a bit disturbing by Huipyeong, who believes that the love and forgiveness of God has become quite narrow-minded. Huipyeong recalls what he heard, that God turned away from his children, which means that he abandoned the God's child. Huipyeong believes that if this is true, then the preacher's God is not someone to be trusted and followed. Suddenly, another worker approaches Huipyeong from inside, commenting that the preacher is very passionate, however, his loudness is getting annoying. Huipyeong believes that the preacher is very unconvincing, so much so that even an erudite like him is not convinced enough to believe his words. He believes that an educated individual would never fall for such words, but believes that his wife might fall for it. This leads to the worker asking Huipyeong if his wife believes in God. Huipyeong reveals that his wife believed in the God, Buddha, and everyone that preaches good beliefs. However, to describe it better, Huipyeong explains that his wife believes in the sky, or perhaps the deities that are in the sky. Taking himself as an example, Huipyeong mentions his many names and occupations and believes that depending on perspective, the name might differ. With this logic, Huipyeong is fully convinced that a god would have different names across numerous countries and cultures, and the worker totally agrees with this idea. Huipyeong then decides to head back inside the store. Suddenly, he begins to feel dizzy, leading the worker to inquire to Huipyeong if he is feeling unwell. Huipyeong denies and wonders why he has suddenly started getting indigestion, which is nearly impossible to happen. Huipyeong recalls that his stomach is strong enough to digest even steel due to the 5 streams to sea technique. What's more is that rather than from the stomach, the feeling Huipyeong is getting is coming from the heart. He then quickly looks up to the sky, presumably asking his god if something bad happened. He then tells his god that he has been leading an honest life and believes that he deserves better. Furthermore, Huipyeong is willing to be thrown off to the depths of hell and still not resent his god and wants to be left alone to live his life peacefully. Huipyeong requests not to be bothered anymore and reminds his god that many people went rogue in his name and asks for him to pay attention to those astray people. Meanwhile, Gupbang arrives with Choyang to a deserted place in the middle of nowhere with trees scattered vastly around the area. Gupbang looks at Choyang from the rear-view mirror and sees that she is sitting with her head down. He wonders if this is what fruition at the end of hard work means. Gupbang recalls how it was very difficult for him to carry out this work because of her husband, Sukwon, as he won't leave her side. He then begins to wonder what will happen if he is dead, but finds it relieving that nothing will happen since he did not kill him. Moreover, Gupbang wants to finish this as soon as possible and is excited to receive his share of a total of 100,000 yuan. Now that he thinks about it, he realizes that Choyang is a bit expensive and wonders if he can embrace this expensive woman. Gupbang also realizes that the head won't allow him to do anything with Choyang, so he proceeds to inform the guys inside the warehouse to open the door. He then proceeds to drive inside the warehouse, where a total of 4 men are already waiting to take Choyang to their boss. Gupbang tells the men that he has finished his part of the job, for which they thank and appreciate him for his hard work. He then asks the men to make sure to carry out this job properly and suggests that they go out for drinks after the job is done. Gupbang then asks Ah Bong, the helper from earlier in the hotel, to bring Choyang in as she is a valuable person. Ah Bong comments that he received a tip that day, so he is willing to give his best. He then approaches Choyang from the backside window and tells her that it is good to see her again, followed by him asking Choyang if she's enjoying her trip. Meanwhile, Choyang stays calm and waits for the right moment, and when Ah Bong walks closer to the door, she kicks it open, leading Ah Bong to fall to the ground. Choyang then quickly dashes toward him, kicking him right in the face brutally, sending him flying off to the wall, where Ah Bong hits his head and gets smashed due to the heavy impact. The wall is now filled with blood. The lifeless Ah Bong lies dead by the wall, And just like that, Choyeon has successfully begun to follow her father's footsteps after heeding his advice. This ignites an angry reaction from Gutbang, who believes that Choyeon is being a pain in the ass as he is trying to hand her over quietly without any issues. As he is yelling at Choyeon, suddenly a key comes flying toward him, piercing one of his cheeks and leaving a deep wound. Before Gutbang can even react, Choyeon immediately rushes to him and kicks him right in his face, making him face the ground. She then continuously stomps over Gutbang using her kicks, and after a few seconds, she ends up killing yet another person who had decided to meddle with her trip. With her feet on top of Gutbang's head, the feeling is scattered all across the room of the prowess that Choyeon possesses. However, there are still 3 men left to be dealt with, who then begin to circle for them to have a go at Choyeon before she can do something to them. However, this plan doesn't work either, as Choyeon quickly reacts, pulls a key out of her pocket, gazes at one man but throws it on another, catching him off guard. She then quickly rushes to the injured guy and kicks him right on his face, sending him flying off to the windshield of the car. However, the impact is so severe that the man's head goes smashing through the windshield, and in the process, he dies after sustaining some very serious injuries. A man then successfully manages to inflict damage on Choyeon after throwing a knife at her, which strikes her thigh. The other man then tells the one throwing a knife that he is crazy to do such a thing and reminds him that if they somehow kill Choyeon, then they are all going to die along with her. This means that he wants him to stay put and not do anything, which is not sitting right with the guy that threw the knife. Meanwhile, Choyeon is wondering what the guys meant when they say that they are going to die if she is to die as well. The goons decide to catch Choyeon first, and then they will see what to do with her. They realize that she won't be able to fight as before, as they have managed to hurt her. To get out of this situation, Choyeon quickly devises a plan, takes out the remaining keys from her pocket, and throws them at the 2 goons, causing a distraction. As soon as the 2 recover from this, they threaten Choyeon that they are going to make her pay for what she has done. However, Choyeon appears not to be seen anywhere as the 2 grow weary of their surroundings. Suddenly, they hear the rumbling of an engine, and as soon as they turn around, it is already too late for them to stop Choyeon, as she has taken the car. Choyeon moves the car outside of the warehouse and accelerates off, while the 2 goons attempt to chase her, but only in vain. They realize that they have messed up, but they cannot really do anything about this situation. Choyeon appears to have decided to go to Sukwon. Moreover, she realizes that the route is straight, and she appears to have remembered the few turns that they took when she was being brought here by Gutbang. All of a sudden, Choyeon notices a police patrol giving her signs to stop. Choyeon immediately begins to wonder if it is okay for her to stop right now, as she just killed a few people. However, she considers that as self-defense and thinks that she will be fine as long as she stays calm and not panic. She also realizes that she needs to contact her father if she wants to find Sukwon unharmed. The 2 police officers then begin to walk toward Choyeon, who has just stopped the car. Choyeon gets out of her car and immediately falls to her knees, asking for help in Mandarin. However, her Mandarin is quite broken and hard to understand. She reveals that she has lost too much blood when suddenly the lady officer rushes to Choyeon after seeing that she is in a very critical condition. With tears in her eyes, Choyeon requests the police lady to allow her to make a phone call and asks for her phone to do so. After seeing no plausible response from the police, Choyeon realizes that she should have learned Mandarin when she had the chance and wonders if she should start speaking in English in the hopes that they might understand her. With gestures and while speaking in English, Choyeon once again asks the police lady to give her a phone, mentioning that her life depends on it. She also reveals that she has been kidnapped. Finally, after too much effort, Choyeon manages to convince the police lady to help her out, who in return asks Choyeon to stay calm. She then hands over her phone to Choyeon, who begins to dial Webtoon's number. Thereupon, an unfortunate event takes place and Choyeon gets hit on the head from behind by the police lady. This revelation turns out to be nothing surprising, as it was quite obvious how they were acting, but it seems that Choyeon was not able to read the atmosphere and she was in a state of panic. The police lady then begins swearing at the men they hired to take care of Choyeon, as they could not do their jobs properly. There were 5 men and none of them were able to handle Choyeon. Moreover, the police lady also appears to be frustrated by the fact that her Mercedes-Benz got scratched. She then asks her subordinate to cuff Choyeon at the back, as it is not sure when Choyeon might take another unexpected weapon out of nowhere. The police lady then contacts the 2 men and asks them to come and take the girl, while asking them to brace themselves since they managed to let Choyeon escape even after being bigger in terms of strength and numbers. She is quite infuriated by all this, as Choyeon led to the death of 3 decent people, but she is determined to make her pay for this. She then asks the subordinate, Chu, to contact Renming Hospital and ask them as to why they needed to send a driver inside of the truck that hit Sukwon. Moreover, she asks Chu tell them to come and drag Choyeon back before she starts cooking up a fuss and realizes that the situation might take a turn once again if they are to drag things on. Stu Bingbing, the police lady, contacts her boss and informs him that they have safely retrieved his item. The boss appears to have instructed her something, to which she comments that she understands and mentions that it would be her honor to carry out the job that he has assigned her. Frustrated, Bingbing ends the call while contemplating how she is supposed to report this matter. She then tells Chu that they have to deliver Choyeon in pristine condition, and since they have lost some manpower, she realizes that they are already half-screwed. Bingbing also understands that this is not a time for her to make excuses and decides that she needs to kneel and beg for forgiveness from her boss. Moreover, she now has to fill up another report about this matter, but she is sure that she will be pardoned, as she has developed very close relations and has gained her boss's trust. It appears that she is the only one allowed to make direct contact with the boss. It is December 11th, 2000. YPM is watching junior chefs doing their work quite diligently. Suddenly, he receives a phone call from Seok-won discovering the horrifying news of what's happened to his daughter, Choyeon. The news is so heart-wrenching for Hwaypyeong that he has lost all his senses and can only think of the bad things that might have happened with Choyeon. He then quickly becomes aware that he needs a passport and a visa to go to Myeongdong and mentions that he will come over immediately. Seeing Hwaypyeong panicking, the junior chefs come running to him, asking if there is something wrong, leading him to mention that he doesn't know yet. Hwaypyeong then tries to convince himself that Choyeon will be okay and nothing will happen to her. The very next day, Hwapyeong is sitting idly on a couch while regretting what has happened. He is quite furious, screaming at his dead wife, Jongjin, asking her to return Choyeon to him. Hwapyeong appears to have given in to the thought that Choyeon has died, and so he tells Jongjin to bring Choyeon back. Thereupon, he tells Jongjin that he is going to bring Choyeon and asks her to not scold him for bringing her back. Thanks for watching. If you dug this wild ride of epic battles, hidden secrets, and badass justice, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more killer content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment and stay tuned for more epicness. Catch you in the next video.